This conference will now be recorded.
Sorry. Okay, hello everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It is a little bit after 8 o'clock, about 8:02. Today is Tuesday, October 13th. Tonight, this is a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We have a general meeting and just a general meeting. But we have no public hearings tonight. Kara Gately is not here tonight. She did have a death in the family. So she's busy with those arrangements and whatnot. Oh, Larry Warble is here. It's 10:02, whatever it's 10:05. So let's get right into it. The first item we have on the agenda is business site plan number 246A as an apple. Business special permit Darien Library at 1441 Boston Post Road. This looks like the library's got a storage room in the basement that is less than 300 square feet, and they want to turn it into a staff lounge. We got a letter and a little floor plan from them, but it's not really an application.
Right, this is an amendment to the prior special permit for the Darien Library. New Darien Library Director Kiara Parrott is here. Just for your information, I've been working with former Director Alan Gray for a while on this, and obviously, the letter dated September 29th is self-explanatory. They just want a larger staff lounge. They're going to put that in the existing basement and then turn the existing staff lounge, which is on an upper floor, towards a private study room. So it complies with the regulations, but it's an amendment of the existing special permit for the library.
So that's why we're saying this?
That's correct.
Okay. And it's no staff down there. It's eventually going to be sent up for the
Yes, we need a zoning and building permit, and they'll have to go with the building department.
Fantastic. Is it Kira? Is that how you pronounce your name? Kira Perez?
Yes, that's right. Hello.
Welcome. We are the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you are the new director of the library. So it's your first time here, so we figured to give you some airtime.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes, as Jeremy said, this is, I'm sorry?
Thank you for coming to Darien.
Oh, well, very happy to be here and to be back. I used to work at the library and then I left in 2013. So it's kind of a homecoming of sorts. Jeremy said, yeah, we're basically looking to turn the basement, which is just storage space, into a nicer staff lounge for our wonderful librarians and library workers. And also be able to social distance in ways that we really can't do in the current staff lounge, which is very small.
Okay. It looks pretty straightforward. You're putting in a couple of tables, a reading room, but this is still downstairs, right, Jeremy?
Yes.
Reading room, employee flexible space. Yeah, so this and this is the same.
That's correct.
Okay, it's pretty straightforward. I don't really have any questions, and I don't have a problem with it. See if anybody else. George Riley, your mic is on.
I have no questions or concerns.
Jennifer looks like she's happy. Larry looks like he's happy. Jim Rand, you okay, Jim?
I'm okay with it. Absolutely.
Fantastic. So what do we do? We take a vote?
Vote to amend the existing special permit.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to amend the existing special permit for the library. And then that's George Riley is the
Happy to.
firster.
Yep, made the motion.
Made the motion, Jennifer seconded. All right, all those in favor? Jim, just yell aye.
Aye.
Here we go.
5-0.
5-0. Kara, you get your first approval as the new director. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. I very much appreciate it. The whole staff does.
Let your company do the work tomorrow.
We'll send you a letter confirming the approval tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, we have an informal discussion regarding 7 Sedgwick. That is the old Bank of America building that's directly outside of Goodwives Shopping Center, if anybody remembers. There was a gentleman that was here a year ago, 6 months
I
ago.
think it was about 6 to 8 months ago, talking about the potential for redeveloping the site. What you have in your packets is an updated survey dated June 2020, showing the existing property, how it all lays out under current conditions. And you can see note 5 from the surveyor shows that the property is in the flood zone. Nick Fletcher is here to talk a little bit about his idea, his concept, and get feedback from the commission on an informal basis.
Chip, whoever Chip is.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Chip's gone.
So Jeremy, thank you, and the commission. I appreciate everybody taking the time to hear us out a little bit. So I wanted to take this opportunity to actually really provide a little bit of background on the group, a little bit more about our business plan, some information around tenancy that we've got, I think, in tow for this particular location. And then to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the challenges that we're experiencing. And ultimately, I'd love to just better educate myself from your perspective, and just pose a couple of questions to gather some insight as to how the commission and how planning and zoning is going to perceive this project based on some of the circumstances and some of the challenges that we've identified. So if you don't mind, I guess I can jump into it real quickly, unless there's any just immediate thoughts or questions.
Well, it's zone CBD, and it's a little bit under an acre, right?
Yes.
No, go right ahead, Nick. Floor is yours.
Great. Okay, great. So, okay, just by way of background, just so that everybody understands, this property is 7 Sedgwick. It's a single-story structure. It's a brick veneer, wood framed, sits on just about, I think it was just over a half an acre. Is that right, Jeremy? Or somewhere in that?
Half an acre, 20,649 square feet, about a half an acre.
So it's the former Bank of America, as you guys can recall. It's sat vacant for a little bit now, for probably a year, for probably like 2 to 3 years. What's particularly unique about it is that it offers up an opportunity to utilize a drive-through, which we think is a fairly interesting feature and element to the property, and something that we've been sort of marketing and has actually received quite a bit of attention. So as a group, taking a step back.
Nick, did you buy it yet, or is you looking to buy it?
Well, we have it currently under LOI. We will be under contract here in the next week.
Okay.
To property.
So you can market it while you're under LOI. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and so we have a tenant who we've already agreed on lease terms for, which I'll describe a little bit later in the conversation about who they are, because I think it's actually a pretty interesting concept and use for the property that I think would be very much in line with the town, and we think is a pretty cool, would be a cool addition to Darien. So the group that's looking to purchase it is a group called Panamera. So Panamera is basically a grouping of myself, my partner Jacques, who's on the call, as well as my brother Ryan Fletcher. Best way to think about us, we're a value add real estate firm based here in Darien, and we're kind of like the commercial extension of Fletcher Development. So if you guys are familiar with any of the residential construction that goes on in town through Fletcher Development, we're the commercial arm to that. And so we also performed the work at 320 and 330 Post Road, which is the Darien crossing properties. And the idea is that we want to, we see assets that are either vacant or nothing's been done to, and we see those as great opportunities to transform them into really exceptional, authentic Darien properties that bring and build the community, and also that I think the residents are going to be fond of. So that's who we are. That's the people behind this idea, the site you guys are familiar with. So our business plan is ultimately to acquire the property, and then we're going to really try and take a page out of the Darien crossing playbook, which is to completely renovate everything from the landscape, the parking, activating the outdoors, improving the exterior of the building, modernizing it, and then doing a complete renovation of the interior. That includes everything from floors, ceilings, mechanicals, and then implementing a pretty, I think, extensive tenant improvement package for the tenant that we have in tow. So the idea is that we want this to become a destination. And so the tenant that we have is actually a group called 4-5 Coffee Roasters. I had mentioned it to Jeremy, and he thought, I think to Dave as well, and Fred, I think you might have been on that phone call as well. It's actually a pretty cool concept. It's these two Greek best friends out of Queens, New York. They started this company, 4-5 Coffee, back in 2010. They've grown over the last, I think, in the last 5 years, they've really taken off. They've got locations everywhere from Los Angeles, Chicago, DC. They probably have a half a dozen or more locations in New York City. And we think it's a very, I don't want to call it trendy, but it's a sort of like edgy but sophisticated brand and concept, sort of with like this like Soho-ish type vibe and ambiance. And they're really highly focused on excellent coffee with a really refined menu. And they brought in a chef who was previously the executive sous chef at Nobu. So the food is exceptional. They've got a location in Manhasset over in Long Island that we've been to, and we were blown away with the product. They don't have any locations in Connecticut, but they're dying to break into Fairfield County. We actually brought them to Darien Crossing and then sort of told them all about Darien. And basically, if you want to get into Fairfield County, Darien Crossing is a great spot to come to. Or I should say Darien is a great town to come to if you want to enter Fairfield County. They are sold. They loved it. We actually showed them this property. They fell in love with it. And we've actively been negotiating terms, and we've basically come to agreement. So we've got the business plan. We have the tenant in tow. And then we're really trying to capitalize on the drive-through that this building has. We think that, one of the things that we've been mindful of is obviously of circulation. As the building is currently laid out in the site development of the current plan, the drive-through I don't think it would work because the drive-through would back up onto Sedgwick, which we're very cognizant of. So what we're probably going to do is try and reinvent the drive-through in some instances. And I think probably a lot of you guys are familiar with what Starbucks has done over on the Post Road, where they have like kind of like pull-up curbside pickup lanes. And so we're thinking that we're going to adopt that model and make that be the permanent solution at this location. So we think that will alleviate any of the circulation issues. We also think it's going to avoid any necessary curb cuts that would be required. And we think it'll work from a parking standpoint as well. So the property already conforms from a parking standpoint. If we do anything to the parking, we should only be adding spaces from our perspective.
Excuse me, Nick, how big's the building? What's the square footage of the building?
Yeah, the building is 2,444 square feet approximately.
Approximately, down to the square foot, that's approximately. There you go.
I haven't measured it, but I'm guessing that's in that ballpark.
Nick?
It's in the league.
Yes, Jennifer.
Nick, so I'm sorry, I'm not getting it right. It's 405 or 45? I'm trying to Google it.
Yeah, so 4-5, so it's FOR.
Oh, okay, so I got the right one.
Yep, 4-5. Yeah, it's like for freedom or like for the world, and it's called 4-5 Coffee.
Right, so they were open in Queens first, is that right? Am I looking at the right one? Okay.
Yep.
I just don't see the menu online, but it has food.
It's got food. The idea is definitely they think that given the size of the building and given the importance of this location, a portion of the building will be dedicated for cooking and for preparation of food.
Okay, cool.
I wonder, I'm pulling up their website right now.
How many seats? This is informal, so it's not getting to the weeds.
Yeah,
How many seats?
So yeah, I'll find it. I'll send you guys the website with the menu so you guys can take a closer look at it. But so here's what I wanted to just really the crux of what I wanted to chat about was around what Jeremy talked about, which is the flooding. So the building, as a result of the sort of the remapping, the property now is in a flood zone. And as a result, if we were to purchase this building, if we would like to, if we do not flood-proof the building, we can only invest 50% of the appraised value of the building into the asset.
Yep.
It's which like, call it $175,000, which we're not very good at doing that. Like if we're going to do this, we need to invest closer to like 800,000 into this property to do it right. So that however, that waterproofing portion of this entire project becomes quite costly. So what I guess what I want to understand for starters is, given what I've presented and what I'm describing to the commission, do you for any reason foresee any issues with the special permit for the use as a restaurant or for the drive-through that might require that we have to shell out more money to just meet what the board needs? Or in order to obtain that special permit, are there any other roadblocks or things that we need to be mindful of from a cost perspective? Because we're seeing this flood item, and that's going to become a serious budget, line item within our budget. I want to make sure that from a special permit standpoint, I've got my bases covered, and wanted to see how the commission would receive this type of concept and the desired business plan as presented.
Thank you for presenting it. It sounds like an idea, and the only thing I'm going to tell you is if at 2,444 square feet and eats inside the restaurants, I don't think your entire business model or the tenant's entire business model is going to be drive-through. If it was 900 square feet, that's different. So you have people going. I'm just mapping out on the site plan. If you're coming in on the northern curb cut, if this is north-south, I think it's north-south. If you're coming in on the northern curb cut and you go out on the southern curb cut, you could probably queue up 6 cars. Right? That's for you to decide. But if that's what one of your main focuses is, that's what your main focus is. The problem with doing it the way I just described is now you've blocked in a bunch of your parking. So waterproof, I mean, I've done a lot of projects like that where it's in a flood zone and you have to keep it to 50% of the value of the building, and it's really hard.
It's very hard.
Or else you're going to knock the whole shoot match down and reposition it. I don't know at this point if it's easy to get a second curb cut on Old Kings Highway to get out of the building because they have the big front lawn. And you can go around the building that way, or you can either come in the other way. But to me, I don't know what your tenant's thinking, because they're the ones that are going to tell you what their business plan is. 50% of their sales is drive up or not. I mean, there's Dunkin' Donuts does not have a drive-through. Starbucks does not have a drive-through. The new one that's going to be Neat does not have a drive-through. The new one that's in at 2 Squab Lane doesn't have a drive-through. So, and then what's the other one in town? The new one, Cafe Nero does not have a drive-through.
Right. That's the question. Would a drive-through which loops onto Old Kings Highway or loops back onto Sedgwick? There's pros and cons. Certainly, that's one issue. Is the tenant willing to do it without a drive-through? We're focused on carry-out. Curbside pickup is what people are calling it now. Is this site going to even work for drive-through? I guess that's the feedback, the sense of the commission that Nick's looking for. Certainly, the flood proofing is a big piece of this, making sure that that bottom area of the building is flood proof during a big storm, very big storm. But I guess,
And that's a 3-foot wall. That's wrapping a thing in concrete and putting it in smart vents. That's easy.
so I think what we usually do, Nick, is commission members will usually give me feedback over the next day, kind of run it through their heads, go out to the site, think about it, and we'll certainly circle back with you on feedback that you get.
And
Can I inquire, Mr. Chairman, can I inquire now?
yeah, let me get one last question, George. And what I would do, Nick, is check with your tenant and what they think their business plan is going to be relative to a drive-through. I mean, certain Starbucks want you to come inside. You know, Dunkin' Donuts doesn't really care. You know,
Yeah.
Cafe Hero wants you to come inside. If they think drive-through is going to be small in their business, you know, it's going to be small. Same thing with like, we didn't do a drive-through at Shake Shack. Those guys are doing great. But it's there. I mean, you're not the one selling the coffee. The tenant is.
Correct.
Right? So you can talk all you want, but you know, you really got to make sure the tenant says that. George, yes, sir.
I'm going to confess I may be the only guy in town who is not a customer of Starbucks. Although I drive by it a lot, I don't know really what Nick was referring to in terms of their lane set up for curbside pickup. So could Nick explain better what you have in mind here?
Of course. Yeah. So what we were, you know, the traditional sense of a drive-through, right, is you have a queuing of cars in line awaiting to pull up to you're essentially, there's 2 stages, right? There's the kiosk where you place your order, then you continue to move forward in the line, and then you're picking up your order at the window where you pay.
Starbucks does that in Darien?
They do not.
No, okay. All right.
That's a traditional drive-through, right? That's
Okay.
how drive-throughs function that we're familiar with. What Starbucks has done as a result of COVID is, in a way, to social distance and to, you know, I think try and make customers more comfortable to not actually go into the store. What they did is they actually dedicated, I think, the first 4 parking spots in front of the storefront, and they dedicated those to what they're calling curbside pickup. So what you do is you place your order via a mobile app. You know, when you're at home, you drive to Starbucks, you park in one of the designated parking spots for curbside pickup. I think there's a way that they notify the application and notifies the inside workers that you've arrived, and then there's a runner. So there's an employee of Starbucks who then takes your order from indoors, runs it outside, and then delivers it to you in your vehicle. So there's no queue, which is, I think, one of the interesting ideas about it, is that there's no stream of cars waiting that might potentially block or inhibit drivers to get in and out of the premise. That's what Starbucks has done. I think they've had some success for it. It's just that the parking, to be honest with you, the parking at that location is a challenge. And because it's on the post road, there's a lot of overflow, which I think we're all quite familiar with.
That's what I was going to ask, whether the post road ends up being used for a pickup as well, and you think it does.
I believe it does. I think most would probably agree with that.
Thanks. Okay, now I get it better. Thank you.
Sure. I think the last thing that I understand you guys have an agenda. So the last thing that I wanted to just pose as a question is, the last thing that I would love to get some feedback from and allow you guys to think through is the possibility of a larger idea here, which is that of a mixed use development on this site. As you guys are aware, we're more than capable and experienced with this type of work. We have not yet fully baked the idea of converting this site into a mixed use property. And when we say mixed use property, what I'm describing is a retail component on the ground floor with multifamily units above, stacked above. We think the site actually we think it'd be a great site for it. I'm sure the commission has received inquiries about this already, so it probably isn't new, but I would welcome any other feedback that you guys would have about that potential outcome as well. Something that if the waterproofing breaks this as a deal, there's the opportunity to start thinking about it from a mixed use side of it as well. And we would want to bring up to the same sort of time to it.
In that instance, you're just going to scrape the half an acre and rebuild.
That's correct.
Yes, you have retail on the ground or apartments above.
That's right.
Depending on the density, it's as of right.
Yeah, I'd have to, it's something Nick and I talked about, the flood regulations, how they would deal with retail and how much higher any new building might need to be.
I think you can do the same floodplain.
Floodproofing.
For proofing. I mean, that's what they did over at Weed Beach. That's what they did at Middlesex. Same.
Figured out.
Anybody else want to comment on that? I think everyone's, George, no, Jennifer, no, Tim, no.
I'm good.
No, not for me.
No, I'm good.
I mean, this is preliminary and informal, Nick, so, we'll look at it. I mean, I get it, you're under LOI and you got to make a business decision. Jeremy's a great guide. We appreciate your honesty and upfrontness. I would want to go into a big purchase without glasses on either. But we most things can work. I mean, I would not be shocked to see a 2-story building there.
We've got a lot to mull over, but I really appreciate everybody's time. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Jeremy, as always, thank you guys for setting this up.
No sweat, you got it. Good luck.
Take care.
All right, next. Informal discussion with regards to 3 Parklands. I think we have Craig Flaherty. I saw his smiling face. There he is. For everyone that remembers, 3 Parklands is the office building that's at the bottom end of 1 Parklands, which is the new assisted living thing. I think the building is about 40,000 feet. And it's an office building in an office market that's kind of soft. So Greg asked to have an informal discussion with regard to this. Jeremy and I had a discussion with Craig and his client 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Correct.
So we have a little bit of a heads up what's going on. But Craig, well, the last person took a half an hour. If you can keep it under a half an hour, I greatly appreciate it.
We will do our best. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you great. Thank you.
Okay, good. So yes, thank you, Craig Flaherty, Principal and Senior Engineer with Redness and Mead, a land use consulting company in Stamford. Here with Bob Gillen, Principal of 3 Parklands LLC. We have a few other members of the team on the call listening, including Bob's associate Megan, our architect David Ball, Bob's attorney for this matter, Tim Hollister. We are talking about 3 Parklands Drive. This is your orientation. So you remember we've got the assisted living facility now run by LCB in front of the site. 3 Parklands is the office building in the back of the site. It's 2 stories of office over 1 story of garage. Next door, you've got the rest area northbound on I-95 here at the bottom of the screen. You get to the site on that Old Kings Highway North Bridge and up Parklands Drive, and in this way. And notably in the back of the site, you've got Selleck's Woods, partly owned between the land trust and the town. So as Steve said, the rental office market is depressed and struggling, and that is still true. The designed office zone vacancy rate in Darien is 28%. Fairfield County office vacancy rate mirrors that. And as a reminder, this is where your DO zones are in town. So we're up here. This is the Parklands site in this location. 3 Parklands is back here. But you've got the DO zones across Old Kings Highway North there that were just remodeled. You got a couple of sites on Tokenique Road after the highway and before you get to the school. All the properties kind of behind downtown are in the DO zone. And then Nielsen's over here in the library and the police station are the DO zone, although the municipal use is overlaid on the library and the police station. So those are major DO sites in town, just for reference. We're in this one. So Bob is in
Thornwood Circle. You call it Nielsen, it's Thornwood Circle Office Park.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Bob has invested a lot of money in the building to try to improve its curb appeal and to market it as office suites. Unfortunately, that has not helped, and vacancy in the building is worse than the market. Given its hidden location, it's still more than 40%. So we're trying to figure out how best to utilize this underutilized building. And so what we've been working with Bob on is the idea of adaptively reusing the existing building and converting it to a residential use. We believe this solution is consistent with the secluded nature of the site. We've confirmed with LCB that they feel that it is complementary to the assisted living facility. We see the adjacency to the open space as a benefit. And from this site, you can still walk to get your groceries at Trader Joe's or get in the bus or go to a restaurant. First set of positive impacts we believe would be, again, the adaptive reuse of the building on an already developed site. We believe it's consistent with the POCD strategy to diversify Darien's housing portfolio, and I have more on that if you want to go in depth on that. Provides more opportunities for younger and older residents, which is also something talked about in the POCD. Would add affordable housing through the application of the inclusionary zoning regulations. And of course, it would increase the value of the grand list to have an improved building. Bob has been very thoughtful in his approach to this and very careful in how to select the right plan. We've looked at a number of different plans, everything from a knockdown rebuild and 3 floors to a large addition. I've helped advise him on zoning implications and potential. We've looked at site impacts and infrastructure. He's done a market analysis to see the market need, tested the construction costs to make sure the project is viable. We even considered 830G for a while. We don't necessarily think it works, or it's certainly not our first choice. And what we've settled on is this version. Basically, it's an adaptive reuse of the existing office building. It does add a 3rd floor, which is allowed in the zone. We create a small residential addition off of the front, basically to give it a more residential curb appeal from the office face that's there now. We think a good mix, based on some guidance we received, was 10 studio apartments, 21 bedroom apartments, 22 2-bedroom apartments, which would include 6 below market rate units. But beyond the below market rate units, the studios are added to provide a lower cost, lower square foot option, which might be attractive for folks in the middle income band. Quickly on site, we take the big loop that exists in front of the building today, we bring it around back. We think that enhances fire access and around the building, because now they'll be able to get to the back and turn around. We reuse the existing covered garage below the building. The floor plans, because of the shape of the office building, we have apartments around the perimeter and room for large amenity spaces in the middle of each floor. These are some early renders just to try to start putting some residential skin on the building, changing out the windows and so forth. And you can see that addition in the front, the added floor on top, maybe an opportunity for a roof terrace if it makes sense. But the punchline here, of course, is that multifamily is not allowed use in the DO zone. So in order to get from point A to point B, which we think is a good idea on the face of it, we need to come up with some new zoning to do so. And the idea that we think might work is any idea really needs to be sensitive to development potential in DO zone, right? We don't want to convert all our DO zones. We want to leave office in town. So we create a design residential overlay that can land on the DO zone. So the discretion to apply the zone is in the hands of the commission. based on confirmation that it's consistent with the POCD. And ultimately, what we're proposing is something that would comply with the height, stories, coverage, and setbacks for the underlying zone. So you're not ending up with any more building mass on the site than you otherwise could with the existing regulations. The inclusionary zoning regulations would apply, so you'd get a 12% affordability component to any new units created. And then depending on how we might craft this overlay, you could come up with other allowances or limits, right? So we could additionally limit to sites larger than 5 acres. We're on a 7.9 acre site. You could limit it to just studio 1s and 2s if you're worried about family size with 3-bedroom apartments. We could limit the gross floor area allocated to residential on the site, so it's not the primary use of the property. So this is an area where I think feedback from Jeremy and any commission members would be helpful as you start to consider it. Trust me that I've gone through the POCD. This is one of a couple of pages of quotes from the POCD that back the opinion that this is an idea that makes sense. There's continuing to diversify Darien's housing portfolio. There's the fact that we may not be gaining young people and we may be losing older residents. The fact that we have less multifamily housing than peer towns like Westport, Wilton, and New Canaan. The fact that the DO zones were included in the possible development opportunity areas in the policy area map, and the idea that maintaining residential character is important. And this is actually, takes office and moves it towards residential next to the park. So that's pretty much the presentation. We think it certainly makes sense for the site. Hopefully you agree. We believe it's consistent with POCD, and we can get into detail on that with staff and a future application if we get that far. But really why we're here is we don't want to forge ahead and spend a lot of money if we're going to run into a brick wall.
You good?
I'm good. How was that? It was like 12 minutes?
You did. That was good. You spoke. It's actually less than 12 minutes. I got you at 9.
Okay, good.
I echo what Craig, said relative to the office market. The office market is transit orientated, new construction downtown. The Class B stuff, which is no offense to Bob Gillen, but it's a Class B building. Not on a main drag at the end of the thing. That market is kind of, it's a flight to quality where it is today. And if he's 40% vacant and he's been trying to lease it up for 2 years, it's a tough sell. At the end of the day, with that said, converting into a residential, office to residential is something that started in Manhattan when I was in Manhattan a long time ago. We did it in Darien once with the Garden Homes project. We could do it again in other spots. And it comes down to an appraiser answer, which is I'm a certified appraiser that is called the highest and best use. The highest and best use of the property is not office today, even though it's zoned for that. And residential is good. The big issue is getting the zoning correct. It is a lift and do it. I have no interest in converting all of Darien's designed office zones to include residential. I think makes no sense. The overlay issue, I think it's an idea that can work. So in the grand scheme of life, if you can make the parking work and we can figure out the zoning code it's going to be in, and I think there's excess parking with the other use, which is your adjacent assisted living center, because I've never seen that parking lot full. If you're okay, I also do know that you have that condominium issue with the property that you have to deal with. So we got to figure that out. But I mean, that's my overview picture. I think it's a fine idea. and that you can refine, but I'd like to have the other commissioners chime in also. Larry, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll echo everything you said, and also just, I think as the working world is changing, and we're going to have to adopt and change with it, just with everything going on. So I think if we were to just like we need to show some flexibility as we see what the impacts of all these COVID changes and people and maybe excuse me, more remote working and everything else. Our office space is going to be as important over the next 20 years as they were the last 20 years. So I think we need to be a little nimble and think of some creative changes. So yeah.
Thank you.
Just from my perspective, it's just going to be the blocking and tackling around parking and things like that too.
Yeah. George, your picture's on. Can you chime in?
Yeah, I like the idea, and I understand the benefits of this. I think we have said before that the business economics of the property owner are not particularly our concern, but at the same time, I see great value in adding to the housing stock, particularly if there's some variety, including below market rate units. I think the traffic issues should be none. So I like it. I can see a third story on that. I can see those, what is it, almost 50 units. I'd love to see the details, but I'm very open to it.
Thank you, George. Yeah, so based on our inclusion in housing, at 52 units, I think that's the number Craig said, at 12%, that's 6 and change affordable units in there. Jim Rand or Jennifer?
This is Jim. I echo what George has just said.
Thank you. Jen, you there?
Yep,
Thank
I'm here.
you, Jim.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Craig, it sounds like you got 5 thumbs up.
All right, sounds like we got to work with staff and come up with the right zoning. Just to put your minds at ease on parking, I feel very comfortable with the parking supply on site. We've got plenty, and when you go from office to residential, it's actually usually less parking used.
Great. Yeah, the 1 bedrooms relative to parking you have to have 1 for the studios. I mean, you're gonna be okay, but the 2s, I think.
Yeah, that Darien has a pretty high bar for required parking at 2.5 parking spaces for every single unit. Right. And I would love it if you would entertain, especially for the studios and 1 bedrooms, a lower value. I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, me personally, I don't think you need 2.5 parking spaces for a studio apartment.
Exactly.
That's a little rough.
It's also that particular requirement is really left over from, predominantly single family town with, maybe a project with a few apartments. And now that we have these larger projects with more apartments, you get an efficiency of scale. When you have 50 apartments, you don't need 2.5 for everybody.
The other thing I would double check too, and I've never done it under my watch, is the Garden Homes project. I'm 90% sure that's all studios. I'd like to
36.
Say again?
35 out of the 36 apartments at Garden Studios are studios.
And then how many parking spaces do they have?
We will count.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you can do that homework, then and I've never heard of parking issue there. If they have 50 spaces, then they get, 1.1 per unit.
Yep.
And it works. Okay, yep. Thanks, Craig. Anything else you want to add before we move on to the next item?
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. The next item we have up for bid, deliberation possible decisions on the following. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 resolutions to go through, team. So the first one is Noroton Presbyterian Church. This is where they're going to make the basketball court bigger and add another basketball court and flatten out the land.
That's correct. We have a draft resolution in your packets. Certainly I wanted to run through some of the conditions we've included. Condition D addresses time, hours of use. Condition E talks about the fact that there's no new lighting, that they're just going to use whatever lighting's on the buildings now. Both the red barn, which is called the shack, and the white barn have some floodlights on them. And we want that documented so in the future we'll know what specifically was allowed at home. Provision F is kind of making sure they fit in with the neighborhood. There's a couple of houses nearby. We want to make sure it's not too unruly out there. So those are the major conditions of approval proposed.
The only item that jumped up the page to me, and we talked about it at the meeting, is it's only for Noroton Presbyterian Church members?
Well, no, it's members and children of members. We can even include employees.
See, that's the part, I'm going down the policing road. If my kid goes over there and plays hoops with his 3 buddies, Dave Keating's not kicking him off on a Sunday.
Right. I guess that question is, does the commission want to church to say, look, this is not for townwide.
You're not having a YMCA league play there.
Exactly. And how does condition G, how do we phrase that, I guess is a good question.
Right. The only in Middlesex Club, there's a basketball court. The entire neighborhood uses it, members or not members. You can put a sign up that says for members only.
Right, I guess member and,
I don't want to get into the police. I don't want some neighbor saying Stephen Ovani's playing basketball there. It's against planning and zoning commission.
Right, but just what you said. On the other hand, we don't want, hey, if you're a member of Woodway Country Club, your basketball league plays at Noroton Presbyterian Church.
I mean, there's people that play basketball across the street at what's that street? School all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're residents.
So I think we can remove condition G or tweak it, or whoever you want it. The commission wants to.
It was, if I may, I may have skipped it. I know you guys listen to the tapes, but I don't remember this being a condition offered by Mr. Lee or anybody at the church, and I wouldn't impose it if they didn't. And at the very least, I'd add and guests to who is permitted. I mean, technically, anybody on their property should at least be a guest. So.
Right.
But if you can remove it consistent with the application, I would remove it. Just avoids an issue.
It does avoid an issue. He did say it was for only Noroton Presbyterian kids and people and stuff like that. And I thought the same thing. I mean, my kid plays pickup basketball in there. Dave Keating's not going to chase him off on a Sunday. Jennifer, Larry, Jim, anybody else comments on this resolution as submitted?
Yeah, I think they probably would want it to have guests too, because I think they tend to open up their youth.
Right.
Great.
I don't want their youth programs to friends of church members to try to build up a little more just interest in the organization. So.
Great. Okay. Jen, Jim, you guys okay? Any issues? Scribner's errors?
Okay.
You're good?
Jim Rand.
I could remove it if the commission says remove it. That's fine with me. Or just tweak it with the word and guess. Those are the 2 options here.
Do you guys want to take out G?
I think we can do that because as the property owner, they can control it. If others come on their property and they don't want them there, they can remove them. But if they don't mind them being there, they can let them stay. So I would move approval with the deletion of G.
Is there a second? There's a second. Okay. All right. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion to approve as amended.
Yep.
All right, great, thank you.
And Jeremy, just to make sure you know, I wasn't here for the hearing, so I abstained from that vote.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Larry, for mentioning that.
Okay. The next one we have is 88 Nearwater Lane. That's the one that's way back off the road. That's going to wait, but Jeremy has a little bit of thinking about this one.
Yeah, we're gonna have to postpone this one. Fred and I want to re-review the draft resolution.
Okay, so we're gonna skip that one. We just saved 10 minutes. Next, we have the pool at 2572 Boston Post Road. Am I supposed to be reading these things?
Well, this is for the pool in the backyard.
Coastal Site Plan Review number 200B as in boy, flood definition application number 217B, land filling and regrading application number 485, Raja and Ritada Gupta at 572 Boston Post Road. We have a draft resolution in hand. This is the pool that's in the back of the house, so the house that sits on Holly Pond. We asked a bunch of questions to make sure it was not too close to the neighbor on the side. It was reviewed by Darren Ostafine, and Doug DeVesta did a great job of engineering, and we're requiring the as-built survey. Questions, comments? How about ladies first? Jennifer, anything on this one?
Hold on one second. I don't think so.
Okay. Larry Warble, any typos, scrivener's errors, nothing? Jim Rand, your mic is on?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. George Riley?
Oh, well, as to Scrivener's errors, I can go to stormwater management number 8. And I highlighted because I think, not to think that there's any boilerplate involved in these resolutions, but I did see it another time in another resolution. Number 8 should be implemented properly instead of property.
Thank you, George.
I know you appreciate that, Jeremy.
You gotta have the lawyer read it to Scrivener's errors. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
That's my
Other
new
than
word.
All good.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve as amended. I think that's Larry, George. Larry seconded. Larry didn't second. No, Larry's not. Jennifer, you seconded.
I second it.
Great. All those in favor? Jim Rand, say aye.
Aye.
Larry abstaining on this one as well, correct?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. Great. Next up, we have 26 Peach Hill Road. Land filling and regrading application number 487, Jeffrey Brown, 26 Peach Hill Road. This is the single family residence that's way in the back in a 2-acre zoning district. Where the guy's gonna knock down the majority of the house and build a new house in the same spot. I think it's site's 2 acres, right?
It's a pretty large site. It's almost 3 acres.
Yeah, it's 3 acres and a 2-acre zone. That's way in the
Pretty boilerplate draft resolution dealing with drainage and grading and requiring as-built certification on the drainage system and the grading. But very, very basic.
Great. Well, I'll leave that till later. That's fine. I didn't see anything in here either. We're trying an as-built survey. Anybody have any Scrivener's errors, changes, questions, comments?
I had a question, Steve.
Go ahead, Jim, what do you got?
Yeah, this issue of live in the old house, erect a new house, tear down the old house, that's off the table.
That's off the table. They didn't get that, but we're gonna run into that maybe when we talk to the subcommittee. But no, you're not allowed to do that in our town as of the current regulations standing today.
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
Okay. George, Jennifer, Larry, we're good?
Good.
Entertain a motion to approve as submitted.
I don't want to, just staff, look at paragraph 7. It'll be a familiar issue.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
You're allowed to say it. All right, looking for a motion to approve as amended, or as corrected, as edited. George, put his hand up. Second from Larry, is it your turn yet? Oh,
I may be abstaining.
You're abstaining. Jennifer. Jim Rand is getting a second.
I'll do it.
There you go. I can't see you smiling.
I know.
That's all right. All those in favor? I think it's 4-0.
Aye.
Yep, 4-0, Larry abstaining.
Great. Okay. Next up, we have, where is it? Amendment to subdivision application number 164 B as in boy, Christopher Muller at 2 Eddy Lane. This is the request to put new plantings and clear out the areas in a conservation easement and an open space easement, right?
Right, what we've done here in the draft resolution is one of the main conditions, basically the only condition is condition C, which talks about the requirement to post conservation easement markers near the easement, which might help mitigate this possibility occurring in the future. So we have those markers in our office. They're little markers that go on posts.
Really?
So you have a post and a little marker. It's, you know, the size of a cell phone, basically just saying this is a conservation easement.
Okay, I've seen those around town. I don't know.
Yeah, there's not too many, but you have the ability in a case like this where it might be difficult to see.
Okay. You don't put it on the border, you put it deep in the woods, or you put
No,
it
you put it
someplace?
at this point right at the edge.
Got it.
Same thing, the project at the corner of Brookside and Post Road, that they're building the two
Yes.
houses.
Yep.
That was a condition of approval. So you
Yep.
see the markers going in on that project as well.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, actually, the thought arose when I read that is just to, you know, let's not have a dozen markers or something. I mean, we want it to remain appearing natural and just in moderation.
And I think that was a question for us, George. We put in the requirement to put in two.
Good, that's fine. Good.
Yeah, because there's an open space easement and there's a conservation easement which are mutually exclusive.
Yep.
They do run a long way.
So I think this would just be marking the conservation easement.
That's fine. Okay, whatever you think. Thank you for that clarification or inside track on this one. How many votes did you see this one, Larry, on this one?
Yeah, I think you guys had a real busy meeting without me because
You missed it?
I didn't see this one either. Do you need me to view it and
Well, 3-0 to 2 would work.
Put it? Okay. That would take a motion to approve as submitted. Jim Rand, looking for a second?
Second by Jennifer.
Okay, all's in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so Jim, Jennifer, and George voted in favor. Steve and Larry abstained.
Correct.
Okey-doke.
All right, that's that. The next item up is a subcommittee report on possible legislation. As you remember, at least 2 meetings ago, or two meetings ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, we set up a subcommittee to review the 3 bills that are now floating around at Hartford. The able bodies that were volunteered or were appointed were George, Jennifer Lake, and Jim Rand. I provided some materials that I'd copied and read about to the subcommittee, and I think they would like to give us a status report. Take it away, subcommittee.
Okay, let me take a crack at this. Because of a misunderstanding on my part, we did not get as far as we hoped to get. But nevertheless, I will try to be brief. I had an opportunity to talk to Bob Maslin at one point about some of this stuff, and his answer, while very helpful, started out with comments about 1789. I'm not going to do that. I'll just there's four bills. There's the Anwar bill, which is the lengthy one, and then there's the 3 others. The 3 others, the Anwar bill is the only one that requires our attention. The 3 others were introduced in last session. They did not get passed in this session, and they're now void. So it's the Anwar bill that we have to worry about. That parenthetically is due for hearings, I understand, in early January, when the legislature reconvenes. The principal point, there's a lot of detail, and I did not get it all because it's difficult for me to understand precisely what's significant and what's not significant, given that a lot of this is changes to past rules and regulations. But just to give you a very quick overview, the bill calls for changes to sewage regulations. That's intended to ease approval of multifamily housing applications, particularly when the sewage regulations appear to be directed at making it more difficult for municipalities to use sanitation rules to deny applications. Stricter zoning rules, I don't know how else to put it. There's a large basket of proposed rules, but the purpose of them is overcoming patterns of segregation, replace segregated living patterns with integrated and balanced living patterns, address significant disparities in housing needs, expressly allow the development of housing which will meet housing needs identified in the state's consolidated plan for housing and community development, allow for mixed use or multifamily development in at least 50% of the area within 1/2 mile radius of a transit station and 1/4 mile radius of an area of concentrated development. Allow family child care home or group child care home in residential areas. Allow manufactured homes, trailers in other words, for use by mentally or physically impaired persons, cottage food operations, accessory apartments on 1/2 acre or single family zones. Limitations on fees and costs allowable for experts and limitations on the costs allowable for experts and for the recovery of costs from an applicant. In other words, if we receive an application, we go out and hire Doug DeVesta, it costs, his charge is $750. The town can only recover $250 of that, and we have to eat the rest. And most important, at least in my view, is the appointment of a state-appointed working group to develop model zoning guidelines for municipalities. Now, all of these bills are based on, or all of these items are based on the extent to which municipalities can be forced to adhere to state guidelines, which in some cases don't exist yet. So if this were to pass, we could be faced with a continuing set of revisions to the state's zoning guidelines, which we have no choice other than to adhere to, which is a problem because it ends up being a moving target. Now, what I hope we're going to be able to accomplish within the next week is to circulate these points, perhaps that we'll redraft them somewhat so they're a little bit more comprehensible, as well as giving the full commission references for each of these points, i.e. where in the proposed rule can they be found. And then before making a presentation to the town, if that's the way we go, and I think there's reasons to suggest that that's probably a good idea, but leave that aside for a moment, and see if we can, among the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, get a consensus as to which of these things are important and which are less so, so that we get a general consensus as to which is important and which isn't important. I just give you an example of the potentially unimportant is this business about educating planning and zoning members. Now, arguably, we already do that, but one of the requirements is that this education includes not zoning rules per se, but disadvantaged individuals, low-income housing, so on and so on, which, as far as I can recall, is not a part of the existing syllabus. The other, now, and we might say, well, we're already doing it, and if all you want us to do is to understand what the problems are with low-income housing, we'll sit still for another couple hours every 6 months or every year and listen to that. So that may not be particularly important. It could even be useful. But there's also issue of they imposing this requirement on the municipality. Who's going to pay for it? And I think subject to getting everybody this list so that we can consider it jointly and try to come to some sort of consensus as to what we're concerned about. That's all I got to say, unless anybody has any questions.
No, Amy.
Yeah, well, Jim, I'm just gonna echo a little bit about the working group that you had mentioned, and I don't know if you saw my updated bullets on the document that you shared, but just to give everybody a sense of what the working group was going to do, they actually laid out the pathway. So the working group will make recommendations to the Secretary of the Office of Policy and Management, who will then write a report that will go to the General Assembly, to the standing committees of the General Stands. And then the Secretary of OPM, consulting with the working group, will then tell us how we're supposed to demonstrate compliance with their new rules. And then we will be required, starting June 1st, 2022, and then at least every 5 years, to demonstrate how we're complying with the act. There's nothing, we have no idea, as Jim said, we have no idea what they might come up with as rules. Just that there's a mechanism in there to lay out the process in which we'll need to comply with these rules that apparently don't really exist today.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and we can have the sense of the commission on one other issue now, and that is once we understand all the issues and we reach a consensus, hopefully a substantial consensus on the issues that we're concerned about or want to take a position about or want to express our views when these hearings take place, do we want to suggest whether or not we should take an active role? I don't know whether it's the commission or the municipality and others take an active role in opposing these new rules. I mean, understanding them and commenting on them, whether we like it or not, is in my view, not going to is not going to create is not going to be helpful. I mean, if these are things that we don't like, or we feel are adverse to our interests, or where we feel the state is overstepping its bounds, or whatever, just reaching that decision is not particularly helpful. If the things we don't like, we ought to oppose them. And then the question is, should we report that view of opposition to Jamie and the rest of the town? And should we go so far as to suggest ways in which we could mount or should mount this opposition?
So I'll add to that as well. So I think that if that's what we decide is the prudent thing to do, I think it's important for us to have informal conversations like Steve did with other commissions and to see how we can form a united, I guess, front or thought process, because it sounds like a lot of us are feeling the same way.
That's already happening, but when you guys are done, when you subcommittee guys are done talking, I'll chime in for a second. But that what you're talking about is already happening. It's happening on the West Cog level. And it's happening on our peer town levels. And I don't know all the people, but I do know the people on the calls that I've had, which are correct. They're informal calls. There's just, 6 or 7 chairmen of planning and zoning commissions talking. I missed the last one, which the other day, and I think 3 other people that were invited were not on it either. But
so who's that? Is that Richfield, New Canaan? Who's
yes.
on those calls?
Yeah. Where's my list?
Westport, right?
The calls that I've done, and I'm going to keep Fairfield at a second. In alphabetical order, it's Darien, Fairfield, Greenwich, New Canaan, Ridgefield, Westport, and Wilton.
Yep.
Those are the 7 towns.
Okay.
Those are the calls that I've been on. I tried aligning it with the DERG, which is our district with on the education world. There's 5 of the towns are the same, and Greenwich is not in our educational DERG, but they're in this thing. I didn't invite these people. I was invitee to it. And then West Cog, I think has got all 7 of these. I don't really know who's in West Cog, but there's all 7 of these plus maybe Easton and Weston.
I don't know if they're doing, the whole West Cog region now includes like 16 or 17 municipalities from here up north to Danbury.
Right.
Up Route 7, Danbury, I think Bethel, some other towns up that way.
Right. So
New Milford. I don't know who's been, as you said, organized or invited to the call. I think it might be the whole group, but I'm not sure.
Well, you invited to the roundtable thing, right? The roundtable?
No, I think you were invited.
I was. I thought you were. Oh, okay. You guys keep going, then I'll chime in when you want me to.
Yeah, I've got more, unless Jen, do you have anything?
Yeah, More, you can go first.
All right. Well, so I think this is where we are from having each of us read. We split the bills up, read them all, read them each, and I think there's a little bit of overlap and back and forth. I think we've come up with a bullet list. Some of it was written up in articles, but bullets of all the issues or items that maybe would cause us a little bit of concern. I don't think we need to read through them all right now. And in some, we saw some language in the bills that actually gave us a little bit of relief, where, for example, the idea of a municipality, of a housing authority having a 15-mile radius of areas they could regulate. There's a clause in the bill that actually invites the town or requires us to invite them in, so to speak. So if someone sets up, say Norwalk wants to do it in Darien, it actually says that our board of selectmen have to kind of vote to invite them in. But after seeing, at the end, after seeing this sort of definition of the working group and what they can do, my feeling is that everything that they've listed out, and even the things that they haven't, that are in some of the advocacy platforms, such as Desegregate Connecticut and their bullet points of things that they want to see happen, I think they're all on the table, because there's this group now, there's this process that's just going to let them take these items and through a process, through an administrative process, put them into make our towns comply with it. So I think we need to be pretty vocal about what those items are and what the impacts to our town would be. And the way some of these things are going to impact our town are different than the way they impact the other towns that we've talked about. You know, a really good example I've been kind of working with is, I was talking with someone I know who lives in Wilton. You know, when I mentioned this issue, they said, well, I have to have a 2-acre plot of land because I need to have my septic system so far away from my well that there's no way you could have anything like that. No, I don't think that's going to impact us as much, but the very concept that, you know, local zoning, you know, local municipalities should make their own rules and not have it farmed out of Hartford is I think the way I feel about it. So I think, you know, my takeaway is, you know, everything that they're considering is something that we should take very seriously.
And to echo what Larry said and Jim, I think that the accountability factor and the idea that we could be held accountable and not have public voice on a local level where we live is a little, I mean, it's very disconcerting as a homeowner. And I think that, you know, neighbors also not having a voice, you know, this is why we're here, right? We're to hold each other accountable, to make sure that we are doing right by our neighbors. And I think there's you know, I don't know how someone relates in Hartford, or even maybe local representatives all feel the same way, but it seems a little bit troubling that someone so far away could be trying to hold us accountable or to not allow us to have accountability for what are the voices of our Darien residents want.
Mm-hmm. Right, the people who voted for us.
Yeah,
They give a voice.
No argument from me, Jennifer.
Steve, can I insert a comment as a non-member of the subcommittee? But before you wrap this up, I just want to bring to the board's attention, reflecting the legal community, which I'm somewhat attuned to. And I'm struck by the fact that the mainstream media, so whatever that may be, has not picked up on this issue. And I think it needs to very soon, because we could be talking about some legislative activity in January. And I've already listened in on a webinar in which no lesser light than Dwight Merriam, the eminent grease of land use attorneys, has weighed in very much in favor of what has been talked about by Desegregate Connecticut and moving forward so that there is more equity, so-called, in housing stock throughout the state. And just this week in the lawyer's Bible, called the Connecticut Law Tribune, which is something most lawyers in the state read, it does cite recent cases, so everybody likes to refer to it. But it also has an editorial board, which I believe is chaired by a former Supreme Court Justice, Joette Katz, if my recollection is right. Anyway, their editorial this week is very strongly in favor of this movement, and it starts out its discussion by pointing to how education suffers from town to town because of the values of the properties, and saying, you know, if you've got a town with an acre and one home, that's obviously more valuable than smaller parcels in other towns, and you're not going to be able to afford the same kind of education. And it says that this has to be a state issue. The state has to do this. You can't rely on the 169 municipalities to do this. So, they're looking to take away that kind of local authority. So I think there are a number of issues that we all need to be aware of. I'm not expressing an opinion of my own at this point, but this is a snowball that is growing fast, and we need to get into it sooner rather than later. Thanks.
Agreed.
Well, George, just, I mean, I feel like, yeah, so just, I'm sorry, because I didn't listen when the lawyers talking about this, but just so we know about trends in America and real estate, that living closer to town on small parcels of land was much more favorable, at least in the last 6.5 years of my working in real estate. We had a trend towards that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying there's not something to be said about equity and parcels of land being able to be broken up into, more housing, but I wouldn't necessarily think that on the ground. And this is kind of like my point, that sometimes ideas seem like they make sense in theory, but in practice, I've sold more houses that have been closer to town on smaller parcels of land as a top producing agent, top 20, I think, in the state. So I'm just putting that out there, that sometimes this is the disconnect between someone who's making up rules and what happens on the ground. So I also think there needs to be a little bit more thought in that. Neil Sedgwick, who, is an expert in commercial. So though, I just wanted to put that out there, because this is like exactly what I'm talking about, where sometimes there's disconnects between, having accountability on such a high level that doesn't really see what happens on the ground.
I agree with you 100%, Jennifer. One of the things that I've struggled with is Jeremy has been the planning and zoning director here for 30 years. 25. When this stuff started, to my knowledge, no one ever contacted you except for Politico or something like that. Is Politico?
Yeah, a lot.
You never had a meeting with anybody special, right?
That's correct. This is all my sense, and I could be wrong. My sense it's being generated from Hartford and New Haven, drivers of most of this.
Great. So my point is, Jennifer, you're on the ground, right? I'm on the ground. No one's consulted us, and people that are not here are coming down with this. It's the top-down thing doesn't. It just rubs me the wrong way. And I'm big fan of local control. We worry about details of parking and details of where water's going to go off of somebody's gutters at a brand new house they're building in town. I don't think without the local review and the local control, you're ever going to get that.
And also before COVID, Westchester was crushing it when trying to sell properties in Fairfield County with, dancing on fire, where they were on these small parcels of land in Scarsdale, in Rye, small parcels of land that were selling for way more price per square foot than I could sell in Greenwich, Connecticut. So again, I don't know, I get it. I maybe the energy behind it is that if you have a large parcel of land that can be broken up, in which case that would be subdivision approval. Like, if, you know what I mean? It's just two different, it's like convoluting two different conversations, because I didn't see that on the ground, that small parcels of land were less desirable. In fact, was selling easier, and my friends in Westchester, and now my team covers it, could sell those faster and for more money.
Yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day, if you three guys are done and nobody has any questions, I want to use a little bit of time to speak. At the end of the day, what I would like to do is, if these bills ever make it to the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate or whatever they do, I would like to give testimony as the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the town of Darien and the spokesperson. I do not want to. Tara Achman did that as the chairman when they were going to regionalize schools. I don't know how Tara works with her board, but I personally would not like to do that unilaterally. I would like to buy in from the 6 people that I work with. I think you guys are all great. I respect you. If you say it should be black, I'm not going to say it's going to be white. I don't know at the end of the day if all 6 of us will agree on all however many points there are. For argument's sake, if there's 12 points, you know, to get all 6 of us or all 3 of you guys in the committee to agree on all 12 points, that's fine. Like in courts, there's always a dissenting opinion. If there's an ascending opinion, you know, I think it's important. But at the end of the day, I would like to be able to do testimony if it makes it to the floor. And if it's in January, it's in January. If it's whatever it is, whatever it is. I would like to do a letter in advance and send it to our representatives, similar to the way they did it in Ridgefield. And I think everyone's got a copy of that. I am told that Greenwich is doing something like that from their chairman, that they're going to take a quote unquote position on some of these things. With regards to our Board of Selectmen and our CEO of the town, which is Jamie Stevenson, the Board of Selectmen, she can do whatever she wants, and her testimony can be whatever her testimony wants to be. You know, I think we are our own commission. It's in the planning and zoning domain. I would like to speak to it as the elected official in town. I would not want to delegate that responsibility to Jamie, and I'd like to do it myself. It's got nothing to do with brownie points. It's not got to do with ego. I just think that's what we were elected to do. And like I said once before, we've not had a subcommittee, to my knowledge, in planning and zoning for 10 years.
Not more.
You know, I've been on 7 or 6 or something like that, and I don't think they ever did it. That's why I really want to do this. I'm a big fan of local control. I already said that. What I did, and I'll eventually send it to you guys, I did a matrix, right, of a couple different items on here, and there ends up being 30 of them. And it's got to a bunch of different things. One of the things, and I didn't read all these things 100%, but I listened to a lot of people that read them, and some things changed. I heard about what you said, Larry. I was told that the radius at one point in time of life was 15 miles. It was 30 miles, and it got chopped down to 15. And the woman from Ridgefield thinks that, you know, if City of Darien wants to commit to Ridgefield, she's got nothing to do with it. But you said they have to be invited in and allowed in. If that's the clause in there, I think that kind of sort of takes it off the table. But I think the difference in some of our towns that are the 7 we spoke about, some of those towns have excess school capacity. You know, so if they built more multifamily in their town or allowed accessory dwelling units in their town, and they had population come in, because maybe it's, you know, Westport or Wilton or Ridgefield or Westport, one of those guys, I think even Fairfield's in that group, you know, they can fill up their schools that are now sitting empty. We don't have that. You know, we're building a $65 or $64 million school, you know, and they're bursting at the seams. Every single one of our schools has got trailers. So if what the demographics relative to Westport or Wilton, they may have their school capacity. We don't have that. So you have more kids in here, and we're always cognizant of that. You know, when we approved the Heights and we approved Federal and we approved David, you know, I got my door broken down by the number of kids that are going to be inside these things. I got my door broken down with regards to Kensett, you know, counting heads. We had testimony from lawyers that said there's only 27 kids, you know, and they got to add on schools. So that's where all the towns are never going to be on the same. Some are going to be on the same page. Some are not going to be on the same page. With regards to education, I've got my broker's license. I get 12 hours of continuing education every 2 years. Jennifer has her broker's license. It's 12 hours, right? Every 2 years. My company pays.
I do it for New York.
Yeah, I do for New York too. I have 4 licenses. I do for appraiser. Appraiser's license 30 hours. The only required class that you have to take as a broker is fair housing. All the other ones could be electives. So if all you guys going to take the fair housing thing, that's fine. You know, if someone's got to pay for it, you know, my company pays for it for me. It's about $2,000 for all my licenses. If the Board of Selectmen's got to say, we got to give, there's $2,000 for, it's an unfunded mandate. There's a lot of unfunded mandates in life, you know, but I think we should know that. If they're going to teach us about, affordable housing, buildings and construction, I can teach one of the classes. I've been doing this for 35 years. No one's asked me to teach a class. I have been asked by other people and presented, but there's things that me personally on the list that I've seen, we do 90% of those things already. 90% of things that people want us to do, I think we already do. We don't have accessory dwelling units, right? And we don't have the education requirements. But I think when I first got on the commission, Jeremy sent me up to someplace like Bethel or somewhere, and I sat in a class for 2 nights and learned how to be a good commissioner. So we already do that too. And Jeremy paid for it. I think all of you 6 people have done it also. The one I think is maybe Larry is not taking a class, but nowadays some of this stuff's online, so you can sit in your house and do it. We even do those items.
Does everyone do that? Sorry, question. Do all the planning and zoning commissions take the same classes?
No. But when I went to the class, I went with somebody.
There's a number of classes throughout the state held throughout the year.
Most of them were given by UConn. Mine was sponsored by UConn.
Right. The one I think we went to was up at UConn.
You and I went
We had
together.
a training session here in Darien. I think it was last year because Kara went to it. Usually there's one big one in Wesleyan every other March, so it would be 6 months from now. Would normally be scheduled. That's the biggest one that I'm familiar with, where they put people in a big lecture hall in Wesleyan and they cover various topics. So there's a number that come to us throughout the year that are held in various parts of the state that we'll continue to keep you abreast of as we find out about them.
But I think what Jennifer's question is, does all the other towns do it? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know.
That'd be interesting. Maybe we already do that, you know what I mean? And some others don't.
That's what this matrix is about. I have that on here. It says, do you guys do continuing education for your town or not? It's a yes or no question. I just want to make
That's
so that.
obvious. But then we can afford to pay for it, right? So how do we do that? Like, I'm just curious about the logistics, right? For towns who can't afford to have all their commission members pay for education, how does that work?
Agreed. But for argument's sake, the state, it's a foregone conclusion. We don't think the state's going to pay for it, right? That's just a conclusion, right? I don't think a commissioner should pay for it. Let's say you're a commissioner, and I love the guy to death. He's now passed away, Gene Coyle. He could not afford to pay $2,000 to be a commissioner on the planning and zoning committee if that was a requirement. I don't think it's fair. And only people that can afford to be on it. It doesn't cost you a dime to be a selectman, but now you have to pay $2,000 to be on the planning and zoning commission. That doesn't commute to me. That's one issue. With regards to accessory dwelling units, they are allowed as of right in Wilton, right?
I don't know.
I think they're allowed as of right in Wilton in every single zone, in every single family zone of Wilton. Wilton does not have 1/5 acre zone. There is no such thing as that in Wilton. So when you say we have it in all zones, they may have 1 acre, 2 acre, 4 acre, and something different, and maybe a tiny multifamily. So they go, oh, we already have in all of our zones. Yeah, but they don't have 1/5 acre. They don't have 3rd acres. Jennifer is one of big points in multifamily where we was talking about parking. If you make Hollow Tree Ridge Road and the 100 block accessory dwelling units, there's no place to park. You can't, so you're gonna add another car. We just heard testimony from a guy earlier, for a studio apartment, you need 2.5 parking spaces. It doesn't work. We held up guys for houses on 1 acre because they don't have enough parking. We did it to a guy over here. We did it to John Cini when he did his house. He took away a parking space and he had to pull it in a thing. That's one of the things that's important. Another thing I saw is solar panels be allowed as of right. We already allow solar panels in our town, but it's by special permit. Did they ever put them on the Royal? The old
My
house?
recollection is they did. Now, solar panels for single family houses are allowed. as of right. We approved, in fact, next quarter, you'll get the quarterly report.
Yeah.
10 this quarter. So we approved 15 to 20 a year. The commission doesn't see those. Those are just approved. So I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that baked in a bill. I'm like, okay. And then I'm going to sort of try to wrap this up. What was the last item? The last item is the sewer treatment stuff. I've been in the commercial real estate business doing subdivisions and housings since, and I'm not that old, it started in 1988. They built those private sewer treatment plants in all over Dutchess and all over Putnam. Putnam County is in the New York City watershed, and you're not allowed to have sewers, and it's very, very hard to get. All the projects I worked on when someone built this private sewer treatment plant went bankrupt. Every single one of them. Because they built them, they're really, really expensive, and it never penciled. But the towns required them, the state of New York required them. The reason why I think they have stuff like that is, and I'm just going to pick a town out of the sky because I read them on TV, like East Granbury, Connecticut. They have no multifamily zone, they have no sewers, they have no nothing, it's farmland. So if a developer wants to buy, 10 acres and put in 10 single family lots, he's got to build a sewer system. I think that's what it's designed to do, but I don't think that we approved the development of where Hollow Tree self-storage is today. One of their proposals was to put a private sewer treatment plant at that property because they couldn't get sewer from the east side or the east side of I-95, and they couldn't get sewer from the south side of I-95, and Avalon wouldn't give them a sewer. So we could have, said, hey, go ahead, do it. It would have been expensive. It would have been expensive to those guys, probably never feasible. And I don't really think that we want private sewer treatment plants in a coastal town like Darien on Delafield Island. That to me, it being a coastal town, I think that matters. Being in East Granbury, where there's nothing but farmland around you, or near Foxwoods, or near what's the casino up there? Mohegan Sun. There's just farmland. Maybe those guys can do it. Maybe somebody can do it. But it doesn't make sense. Everything they're doing, putting all model into one doesn't make sense to me. And I've seen it. I've been around long enough that I've seen these guys go bust, and I've seen stuff that's worked and stuff that hasn't worked. No one ever asked my opinion.
Steve?
Yes, sir.
It's Jim. Just let me make a comment. And I don't disagree with anything you've said, but you're talking about the merits. If you're willing to do it, God bless you. But you're going to go up there and talk about the merits? They don't give a damn what the merits are. You represent a town of 21,000 people in a state of over 3 million. These guys are interested in raising money for their next election and for getting reelected.
Right.
And I may be wrong. I have no experience in politics whatsoever.
Me neither.
The template of hands off our schools, whatever it was called, up there in Wilton, seems to be a much more practical approach than trying to discuss these issues that they're raising on the merits. There are no merits. This thing is driven by a philosophy that the way to cure the ills that they're complaining of is not to spend money in Bridgeport improving the schools or the housing stock. It's based on giving people who are less advantaged an opportunity to move to where the schools, the medical care, the what have you, are better.
Agreed, but what my overall thought process is, it's a little bit of a funnel system, right? So if the three of you guys come up with a platform, then that's great, right? Then you're going to present it. Jennifer asked at our meeting, you know, can we have a public hearing to present our views and make it an open forum? I said, fine, that's great. I'd love to do that. So the 3 of you guys come up with your recommendation, then it goes to the 6 of us. And then we come up with our recommendations. I don't know where the public hearing comes in, but it comes in there. Then we make our decision as a town, as a body of 3, going to a body of 6. Then I take it to the 7 people on this peer group that I'm talking with, and the 7 groups get together, right? And then it goes from the 7 towns to the West Cog, which is 16 towns.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
It's starting from 3, growing to 6, growing to the town of Darien, growing to 7 towns, growing to 16 towns. And then, you know, all 16 towns may speak at a hearing. I don't know. I mean, I love the template that Save Our Schools did. You know, I don't know how they did it, you know, but it worked. So I kind of look at that template, but you know, you're right. I don't want to be the only guy in the room in Hartford going against, you know, 2.9 million people saying I'm the only one. And I agree with you that the voice has to be a bigger group than just one little town in southwestern Connecticut. But I think if it starts from 3 to 6 to the town of Darien to 7 to West Cog and then goes, I think it more of a pull. And it's politics. I'm not a political guy. Lights at the high school is not political. You know, building Cafe Nero or 2 Squab Lane into a coffee house, it's got nothing to do with politics. I don't think we're a political group.
I really, like, I just pressed because, Jim, as much as you say you're not political, you kind of led with it being people getting voted. I think, like Steve said, this is about us going from 3 to 6 to the town of Darien, right? So 21,000 have the opportunity, not that 21,000 will show up, but that we don't make this political, but of the voices of the people we serve. I mean, as a Democrat, I mean, I'm not taking offense of what you're saying, but I'm serving the people of Darien, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or not affiliated. That's my job. That's why I'm here. That's why I was elected. So I just want to put that out there because that sounded political, and I would like it to not be political. I would like it to be serving the people that we're here for.
That's great. I think everything that you guys said tonight are great. You know, we've got time. If anyone else wants to speak, George, you turn your mic back on.
Well, I did. Just, this is where you can disagree with me because I'm going to touch on a political issue. This is, of course, a political issue in Hartford. So we have to play that game a little bit, at least in terms of knowing the process. And if there's going to be some action in January, there are going to be hearings in December at the latest, I would think. So we've got to be attuned to that. And my suggestion is that Senator Bob Duff is the majority leader of the Senate, and he ought to be a resource to tell us what is the schedule, what's going on there. So I would encourage you in an apolitical way, perhaps, but just ask him. He does represent Darien, or a portion of Darien at least,
Well,
to get some insight into that.
I texted Bob.
Yep.
And I haven't heard back, but I will continue to text him until I do hear back, because you're right, George, we have to hear from him. That's important.
George.
Yeah.
2 of the bills, just relative to that, 1 second, Jim. 2 of the bills that exist, and we can talk about it, 2 of them are in the House and 1's in the Senate. Right? So you also have to speak to your House reps, which are Terry Wood, Matt Blumenthal, and Carlo Leone.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Those three guys control 2 of the 3 bills, and the Anwar bill is in the House. Which one's in the Senate? I think that's the one with the radius.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Steve,
Of course, everything's got to go through both houses.
the
Agreed.
other bills don't exist anymore.
So those things that I copied,
They come up again.
as of October 1st,
They might get reintroduced, but
Yeah.
so as we speak, they don't exist.
Okay, you said that at the outset. That's the part about the politics and the legislative side of the state of Connecticut or the United States that I don't understand. I mean, I was in the RTM for 6 years, and I understood the legislative process that the Darien RTM did, but it's definitely a learning curve. I don't really want to get too deep into the weeds on that. I think you have to, if you three commissioners want to reach out now or after for guidance or reasons, that's fine. I would rather keep it the three of you guys decide than the six of us decide, because Bob Duff, from what I know and read, is in the Democratic caucus, loves everything that Desegregate Connecticut, it wants to do. So if you ask Colm and say, what do you think? He's going to give you a political answer. But
I'm suggesting you get from him information about the process at this point, the timing and all.
That's fine. I mean,
and I would also say, by the way, the town spends a fair amount of money on the Connecticut Council of Municipalities, the CCM. Maybe Jeremy has a contact with them. I know certainly through the selectman's office, it could be a good resource, just to let you know. They have lobbyists, they have people who are on top of this, so you can at least find the timeline.
That's where WestCog comes in. There's a WestCog executive director that's supposed to write a letter for the people in WestCog and, wants Darien's input. I don't know the guy. I never met him. I don't know anything. I know you six people. So I'm not going to really speak to that guy and put words in anybody's mouth until you guys authorize me to. So I don't know what he's going to ask, and I don't know what his position is. I don't know. I don't know how that game's played, but I can't. I mean, affordable accessory dwelling units. We as a commission might think those are a great idea in 2-acre zones. If we thought they were a great idea in 2-acre zones a year ago, this application we saw tonight, and this is what I was pushed off later, he could have had that second apartment on his property. It's also, if it ever does come to our board and we pass and say, yes, we'll put in accessory dwelling units, that guy can put a kitchen in his garage, 2 weeks later, if he wants to, but that's what the affordable, that's what one of these processes is. If someone wants to put, a second apartment or a second bedroom with a kitchen at my father-in-law's house, which is the corner of West Avenue and Hollow Tree Ridge Road, where the traffic is terrible, and add 2 more cars, I'm going to say no. And I don't care if it's my father-in-law or not, but 2-acre zones, fine. We can discuss 1-acre zone. There's some people that built houses and barns and garages that have full height second floors. They have every single thing in there except for a bed and a stove. If they want to put a stove in there and rent it out to somebody, that's okay. But I don't think we want bed and breakfast, but that's something maybe we will pass. On my little checklist, that's something we don't have. If you guys want it and the town wants it, that's fine. I mean, I think it's a great idea in a 2-acre zone. I think it's a bad idea in a 1/5 acre zone. So that's my understanding. I really appreciate what you guys have done to date. I'm anxious to see if as collectively, if we can do a letter, and either I sign it like Ridgefield did, or we all sign it. I could go either way. It doesn't matter to me. And if we can come up with a consensus of what we think about whatever legislation they're putting forth, and as a town of Darien, if we can say it, and then I can say to, Greenwich or Ridgefield or whoever else, we love these 10 things, we hate these 2, and we already do 9 out of 12 anyway. So I don't need someone to tell me I have to put solar panels on a roof if we already allow it. The daycare thing, I don't know if I want daycare centers all over town to do yet. Maybe you guys do. It doesn't sound like a good idea to me, but I don't know.
Well, they're going to use the really good trailers.
What's that?
The daycare centers were going to be in trailer homes, so
There you go. So
really good ones, best ones ever.
Yeah.
Hey,
But
George, I wanted to ask you a question, and I don't want to be. Well, I'll just ask the question. You'll understand what I'm trying to do. So, the legal groups that you're members of, do you think that they're behind these provisions? Because frankly, there's going to be a lot of work going against towns that might oppose these, so people are going to do what they can to resist. And there's going to be a lot of billable hours and representing developers who want to come in and get, kind of force a square peg into a round hole.
Well, I will not cast aspersions on the motivation of any of the lawyers involved in this. I don't happen to be one of them, but I'm open to the work. So, I got to say that there are a lot of lawyers involved in this. And, it starts with a professor at Quinnipiac, I believe it is, a lady whose name escapes me. But Dwight Merriam has been right up front about this, and other lawyers that webinar I listened to, sure, they're very much for it. And there's another webinar or thing I'm listening to on Friday. So a lot of lawyers behind it, clearly. Is it all of them? I don't know, but senior land use types. There may be at least one of them listening in on this call tonight who is among them and interested in this. And more power to them. It's fair game.
Well, so do they ask questions? My biggest question is, because there's lots of this that could work really well, is just parking, like, logistical, like parking, traffic. Like, how does, if you have state level, are they going to pay for traffic studies to be done? Like, these are just logistic, like safety of the town. So there's none of that being discussed with the lawyers?
I have no idea. Honestly, I'm not that deep into it. I have no idea. But I think Jeremy's shaking his head and his instinct is right. No, they're going to leave the towns and hope that we don't make big deals out of it. So we don't spend a whole lot of money.
I mean, to me, the state of Connecticut, and I don't follow it that much, is running a deficit through 2024. So you're going to spend more money that you don't have. That's surprising to me. The only other thing that I wanted to say, and one of you guys sparked the reason, was, and Jen, you could maybe comment a little bit, is some of these ideas to me are not feasible. And I always bring it to my own house. My wife redid our kitchen, right? It cost like 50 grand to do the kitchen. If I have an accessory dwelling unit and I want to build it at my house or someplace, and it's going to cost me 50 grand, the payback, if I get $1,000 a month in rent, is 4.5 years. That's not a good economic idea. Your assessment's going to go up because you pulled the building permit. So the part about people adding accessory dwelling units that are expensive, and we're going to recoup money to rent them, it doesn't make any sense to me. And in Greenwich did the accessory dwelling units. They have them around already. So I think, and Jen, you may know this a little bit, but the woman said to me they have 26,000 dwelling units. Is that right?
In Greenwich?
In Greenwich?
That's probably not correct.
Yeah, that's right.
She says she has 26,000 dwelling units, and the accessory dwelling units that are approved today, there's only 100.
That sounds about right.
Sounds right.
So they want to get more, and the reason why they're not deed restricted, right? The reason why they want to get more is they can't get a moratorium for some reason, or have never tried to, but they're trying to get to the 10%, which is a state mandate.
But these aren't deed restricted. So
that's
what they said is, while we allow them, it provides more opportunity and housing diversity, but it's not deed restricted. So people can rent them for whatever they want.
Right. And it has to be in Greenwich. They want to be able to rent them to only affordable housing units, to elderly, or to disabled. Right. I said, what about your college kid that comes home from college that doesn't have a job yet, or your kids that's a postgraduate? Does that count? And they told me no. But they drafted this revision to their zoning code 3 times and pulled it back. So they're still noodling with it. Where it's going to land out, check out at the end, I don't know. But they're pushing forward on it. So feasibility is stuff that doesn't make sense to me, because you know, if I'm going to add, we talked about this at the granny pods, and I forget who was on the commission. I priced out a granny pod. It was $250,000. And if I put my grandmother in there with my mother, it would have cost me 250 grand. And then when she died, I got to rip it down.
Right.
It's kind of hard to, there's no resale market for those things.
So I have a question now. So if it's allowed by right, because I don't exactly understand what that means, just, so do they have to come, so if someone wants to change their, you know, the bonus room above their garage into an accessory dwelling unit and put in a kitchen, et cetera, do they still have to come to you for a permit?
They would need a simple zoning and building permit, which if it complies, we could not deny. So at that point,
But they have to come to apply for a permit, right?
they're doing construction. It depends what you're doing. You know, some, as Steve said,
If you're pulling a building and electrical permit, you have to get a
Right.
permit.
right. So,
But it would
How
never.
can you put in like a plug-in,
You
you know, like,
right, if you're plugging in a refrigerator and a hot pot and a stove, if you already have the appliance court, you're good to go.
okay, so, and then there's nothing with the CO or insurance that wouldn't count, right? Like, you know how I get nervous when when people have temporary COs and stuff, and how about if there's something that happens, who's liable, and will the people inside the dwelling unit be covered? Like, is insurance applicable? Like, these are things at state level, I don't know. But I certainly, if we're gonna say it's okay, I wanna make sure whoever's in there is also protected.
The way the draft is written, you would never seen it. The way that Greenwich is written, it's administrative approval, and the only person who would see is Jeremy, like the tents at the restaurants. We gave Jeremy, when COVID hit, we gave Jeremy and the planning zoning permission, administrative approval to approve a litany of things. It's all temporary, but we give him approval to do a litany of things. The way Greenwich is doing their accessory dwelling units, it's all administrative approval that Jeremy of Greenwich, if he sees it and it looks good, he signs off on it, sends across the hall to the building department. The building department, you're going to pull an electrical permit and a gas permit and a plumbing permit. You're off to the races. It'll eventually hit your taxes when the building department talks to the assessor and it goes downstairs. And on the building permit, you have to put on that it cost me 50 grand to put this thing on it. Then you're going to get assessed on it and pay taxes on it. But at the way Greenwich is doing it, it's not special permit. We would never see it. In our town right now, most of that stuff, the garages with like the one of the house, we approved an ice skating rink that had locker rooms in it. You know, we approved this, there's a locker room in it. You know, there's probably couches in there that are nicer than, you know, my queen size bed. You know, I don't know, but it doesn't have a kitchen.
Well, I'm more concerned.
Doesn't have a store.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that my thing is just liability, right? Like, who's accountable? So if they can plug in a fridge and like a hot pot, whatever, fantastic. Like, insurance wise, there's just liabilities. It seems like if lawyers are talking, I don't know this, but I do know that if you have someone who's renting in your house, you need to make sure your insurance covers them. But if it's never been, I don't know, if there's no approval formally, right? Like, there just seems to be, I don't know. Anyway, it's a George question. I guess it's a lawyer question, but these are all sort of iterations that someone's, you know, it's like parking and traffic studies. Like, who's liable if something goes wrong? There's a fire, but it's a hot pot, and
Call me at my office, will you?
what?
Call me at my office. We'll set something up.
You gotta call him. You gotta call him between 9 and 5 when his clock turns on.
All right.
It's now 10 o'clock at night. We can keep talking about this if you want to. I think I'm probably talked out. I would also like to push off the approval of minutes to next week.
You got it?
That's the only last thing on our agenda. Our next meeting is October 20th. Relative to timeline, and this is where I'm kind of open. I have my own opinion, but relative to timeline, I would like to have the subcommittee's work done and maybe even the letter done if we're going to do a letter, if we decide to do that, prior to November 3rd. I'd like to have it done prior to the election because I don't know who's going to be elected and who's not going to be elected. if the subcommittee thinks they can do it and it's, 2 weeks from today,
3 weeks.
3 weeks from today, that'd be great. I don't know if you need more time, if there's more time to research. I think we beat it around enough. But if you could draft something in 2 weeks and we get it done before then, that's great. I can tell you that when I spoke to the one from Ridgefield, when whoever drafted their first letter, they went through like 3 drafts before everybody on their planning and zoning commission decided that was okay. But is that a realistic timeline? I don't want, George mentioned, they're going to start having hearings on this stuff in December, and I agree with you. I don't want to push it off. I don't want to push it off to January. That does nothing for us. You could kind of sort of wrap it up in 2 weeks if you wanted to, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, I don't want to for the others, but I think that we've identified the bullet issues that concern us the most. So I think if the 3 of us just spend some time on the phone, we can go through those bullet items and prioritize them and probably turn that into a working draft that we can circulate among the larger committee.
That'd be
Jim and
great.
Jen, do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
And then, all right, last piece of it for just calendar work. I'm looking at the calendar. Jeremy's got a meeting on
Next week.
but this is no, I'm looking for, I think, October 20th and October 27th. Jennifer, you asked at the time, can we have whatever the subcommittee does or whatever the committee does as a public hearing? Did we wanted the public hearing to be on the 27th? Is that too soon? Or the next, we don't have a meeting on election day, right? So the next
November 10th.
would be November
or
10th.
November 17th. I think we meet both those nights. Oh, we could.
So it's a 2-part question. One is, if you guys get your working draft done by the 27th, which is 2 weeks from today, then we can noodle around with that. And then we can have a public hearing on, it's going to be December 10th, right? No,
November 10th
November
or
10th.
November 17th would be the 2 choices.
That's what Jennifer asked for. I said yes. Is that what we still think we want to have? I mean, you might have a public hearing, but nobody may show up. You have no idea.
Yeah, I think we have to. I think that's the point, right? Is that we want voices heard. So if we
Right,
want our voice.
Yeah, that's my 3 going to 6 going to the town. If it's
Yeah,
a
maybe
public,
the town feels like this is awesome. Maybe people will show up and say, this is the best, this is a fantastic proposal. We should.
I mean, that's when you open up to a public hearing, you open up to 21,000 people. Those Board of Education meetings now, I'm told that they have 800 people on their Zooms.
I've been on them.
That's out of control.
Well, listen, when the people want to talk, let them talk.
That's right.
We're here.
Agreed.
That way.
All right, let's crawl before we walk. We'll get to you guys. Maybe you can do a 2-minute report on the next meeting on the 20th. If we think we have a working draft on the 27th, then we'll save room for you guys on the agenda. If the 27th would save room for a longer subcommittee discussion. And
I'll
then,
work with the subcommittee on.
right, and then if you want to do a public hearing, as it stands right now, the first time we could do a public hearing would be November 10th. Okay? So you just have to keep space on your agenda.
You got
All
it.
right? Anything else before I ask for a motion to, well, do we have to take a motion to amend the agenda to get rid of the approval of minutes?
Nope.
Okay, we don't do that. All right, so the boom, we got rid of that. There's no other business. We talked about the next 2 meetings. The last thing on my piece of paper is adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, there it is. George Riley. Jim Rand is the second.
Yeah, second.
There you go. All those in favor? Thanks,
Aye.
everybody. Have a great night. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.